Hello, history enthusiasts, and welcome back to our channel. I'm your host, Nuhei. Today, we're setting our sights on an epic defining event in human history, World War II. We'll be journeying through time, exploring the key events, and piecing together the narrative in a way that's easy to understand and follow. So buckle up as we traverse through the turbulent waves of the past. Stay with us as we delve into the riveting history of the Second World War. The seeds of World War II were sown long before the first shot was fired. The world was still reeling from the devastation of the Great War when the stage was set for another global conflict. At the heart of this prelude to war was the Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919. This peace agreement, meant to end World War I, placed the blame squarely on Germany, imposing hefty reparations and territorial losses. Many Germans felt humiliated, their national pride deeply wounded. This resentment created fertile ground for the rise of radical ideologies. Enter fascism. In Italy, Benito Mussolini capitalized on the social unrest and economic woes of the post-war period. His promises of a strong, unified Italy resonated with many, and by 1922, he had established a totalitarian regime. In Germany, a similar narrative was unfolding. Adolf Hitler, with his fiery rhetoric and promises of a restored Germany, rose to power, establishing the Nazi Party's rule by 1933. Meanwhile, across the globe, Japan was also undergoing significant changes. The 1930s saw an increasingly militaristic Japan, eager to expand its empire. This ambition culminated in the invasion of Manchuria in 1931. This blatant act of aggression marked Japan as a formidable player on the global stage and was a clear violation of the League of Nations principles. These events did not happen in isolation. Each one influenced and fueled the others, creating a complex web of tension that spanned continents. The world watched as Fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, and Imperial Japan grew increasingly aggressive, their actions echoing ominously of war. As these powers flexed their military muscles, the rest of the world could only watch, their protests and pleas for peace falling on deaf ears. The stage was set, the actors in place, and the script, though unwritten, was all but inevitable. As tensions rose, the world braced itself for a conflict that would alter the course of history. In 1939, the world watched in horror as Germany invaded Poland, marking the start of World War II. This act of aggression by Germany, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, was the spark that ignited the second most devastating war in human history. Germany's invasion of Poland was swift and brutal. Hitler's forces, employing a military strategy known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War, aimed to quickly subdue Poland. The Germans used their superior air power and mechanized ground forces to bombard Polish defenses, leaving the Polish army little time to react or form a coherent defense. The speed and ferocity of Germany's attack stunned the world. While Poland fought valiantly against the onslaught, the superior German forces soon overwhelmed the country. By early October, less than a month after the invasion began, Poland had fallen to the Nazis. But the invasion of Poland was more than just a military conquest. It was a direct challenge to the existing world order. Britain and France, who had assured Poland of their support in case of such an invasion, were now faced with a difficult choice. Do they honor their commitment to Poland and risk a war with Germany, or do they stand by and let Hitler's aggression go unchecked? After intense deliberation, Britain and France made their decision. On September 3, 1939, they declared war on Germany. This was not a decision taken lightly. It signaled the start of a conflict that would engulf the world, a conflict that would involve over 30 countries, cause the deaths of millions of people, and reshape the global landscape. The world was now engaged in a fight on a scale that had never been witnessed before. It was a war that would test the resolve of nations, the courage of soldiers, and the endurance of civilians. It was a war that would bring out the best and the worst in humanity. It was the beginning of World War II. After the invasion of Poland, the conflict rapidly spread across the globe. Germany, under Hitler's leadership, continued its aggressive expansion, turning its sights westward. France, a beacon of culture and democracy, was next in line. In the spring of 1940, using a blitzkrieg strategy, the Nazis swiftly overran the country. The fall of France was a stunning blow to the Allied forces and a haunting testament to the devastating power of the Third Reich. Across the English Channel, Britain braced itself, standing as the last bastion of freedom in Western Europe. The Battle of Britain, as it came to be known, was a fierce air conflict. The Royal Air Force fought valiantly against the German Luftwaffe, defending their skies and their homeland. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the British resilience held firm, turning the tide of the war in their favor. Meanwhile, Hitler cast his gaze eastward, breaking the non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. In the summer of 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, one of the largest military offensives in history. The invasion initially took the Soviets by surprise, but the harsh winter and the tenacity of the Red Army eventually halted the German advance. Far across the Atlantic, the United States had remained largely neutral in the conflict. That all changed on a fateful Sunday in December 1941. Japan, a member of the Axis powers, launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The attack was a shocking wake-up call, propelling the United States into the war, a move that would have profound implications for the global conflict. These events marked a seismic shift in the Second World War. What had begun as a European conflict was now a global war, involving the world's most powerful nations. The war's reach extended from the frozen tundra of the Soviet Union to the sun-soaked islands of the Pacific Ocean. By the end of 1941, the world was truly at war. The years 1942 and 1943 marked a turning point in the Second World War. By this time, the world had been in conflict for 3 long, grueling years. But as we venture into 42 and 43, we see a shift in momentum, a tilt in the balance of power. Let's take a moment to discuss some key events that played a role in this pivot. First and foremost, we have the Battle of Stalingrad. This was no ordinary battle. It was a brutal, hard-fought clash that raged on for over 5 months. The Soviet Union, against all odds, managed to halt the German advance into their territory. This victory was not just a military success, but a psychological one. It shattered the myth of German invincibility and gave hope to the Allies. Next, let's sail across the globe to the Pacific, to the Battle of Midway. Here, the United States, still reeling from the attack on Pearl Harbor, managed to pull off a stunning upset against the Japanese Navy. This victory shifted the tide in the Pacific, putting the Japanese on the defensive and giving the U.S. an upper hand. These battles, among others, were crucial in turning the tide of the war. The Allies, who had been on their back foot for the initial years of the conflict, were now pushing back. The Axis powers, who had seemed unstoppable, were now being stopped in their tracks. But let's not forget, this turn of tide didn't mean the war was nearing its end. Far from it. The Axis powers, despite their losses, were not ready to surrender. They were on the defensive, yes, but they were far from defeated. The years 1942 and 1943 brought a glimmer of hope to a world in darkness. The tide had turned, but the battle was far from over. The Axis powers were now on the defensive, but the war was far from over. In 1945, after 6 long years, the Second World War finally came to an end. This conclusion was not without its share of devastation and heartbreak. The world watched in horror as the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was immense, the loss of life staggering. In the wake of these bombings, Japan had no choice but to surrender. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's capitulation, bringing the global conflict to a close. The world heaved a collective sigh of relief, but the shadow of the war lingered. The landscape of nations had forever changed. The scars, both physical and emotional, ran deep and would take years, if not decades, to heal. World War II had ended, but its impact would be felt for generations to come. The echoes of this war continue to resonate in our world today, shaping our present and influencing our future. And that, dear viewers, was the Second World War in a nutshell. From the prelude to its conclusion, we trace the tide of events that shaped our world. We examined the causes, the battles, the losses, and the victory that marked this monumental period in history. The echoes of World War II still resonate today, reminding us of our past and guiding our future. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.